impact anything in that realm. Things like that. So stories about your background if you want to talk about where you went to college, things like that. What brought you to Atlanta? I don't know if you're an Atlanta native, but if not, what
I
brought you?
feel like one, but I'm not.
Okay,
I've
so
been here over 20 years.
okay, so I've been here 12, so I feel like one, but I'm not either. So I mean, if you want to talk about what brought you to Atlanta 20 years ago, where were you before? Unless I'm assuming you haven't been doing this 20 years. I don't think this has been around that long. So,
I've been doing it for more than 20 years.
but how long has it been in Atlanta? I guess.
So when I moved to Atlanta, is the company that I moved here
Hmm.
to work with was already in place. So they
Oh
were
wow.
doing the Titanic exhibitions at the time.
Okay, so they weren't the more 3D-ish. They were. I've been to a Titanic museum in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Sevierville or whichever one it is. I've been to it a couple different times.
It's right next door to the
The Upside Down House,
yeah. There
Wonderworks.
was a and then there's a theater there too
Yeah,
that
that seems to keep changing names.
it was because it was owned by Fee Entertainment, and then they merged with World Choice, who's Dolly Parton's um, production company.
Oh, so that's a Dolly place.
Now it's Dolly.
So she gets the Dixie Stampede. Her and Hershen have that,
Yeah.
and then she's got this other place.
She also has a Pirates Voyage show that I designed the sets for.
Very cool. You ever thought about bringing a dinner theater type thing to this market?
I haven't. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily rule it out, but right now, I like the lane we're in, which is primarily creating these immersive experiences with some light refreshment. Once you get into the dinner theater side, you're a restaurant as well,
Right.
and I ran restaurants for a long time, so if I can stay out of restaurants, I
Yeah.
will. But obviously, if the public's looking forward to something that we would look at.
Well, I know at one point I was working on a tourism mega site, be the first one in the United States, and we were looking at Memorial Drive. And then it got somehow somebody took it to half of the county, so that just blew up. So then we've talked about some things down at Stonecrest area,
Okay.
um, and
I think we
then
looked at that Memorial Drive site too.
oh, did you? Okay, because that was the one area in the county where it seems like if you just kind of bulldoze from the jail to the mountain, everybody was happy. Because we had a bunch. We took two different trips to Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and that's how we went behind the scenes at all these places. And a lot of the owners were on that first trip, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll sell, we'll develop," because they're like eager to want something.
I mean, it just creates a better sense of place overall. You end up with a lot of other businesses that pop up that benefit from that destination. So it makes a lot of sense that someplace like that area would, I mean, that you find the right piece of land and the right mentality, you really have a winning formula.
We should probably somewhere in here, maybe how the art world's changed during your time or the impact. That'd be very cool to add in what arts does. Because DeKalb has a strong arts community, but it's also very fragmented. We created a group called Anytime You Want. I'm
Yeah.
just busy talking.
No, I was just gonna say, so we can. Is there anything else you guys need before we start?
I think I'm good.
We have coffee and water.
Coffee and
I got some
water.
coffee.
So we can start whenever you want. Just
Anytime? Okay. Well, good morning and welcome to DeKalb Tourism Talks. This is our official podcast, and it's actually our official guest speaker who's on with us today. And I'd like to welcome John Zaller. And tell us a little bit about yourself, John.
Well, I'm a executive producer for Exhibition Hub, and we have been producing exhibitions in the Atlanta area since 2021. I do have a long history in Atlanta. I've lived here about 20 years and have created a lot of exhibitions during my time here and produced a lot of them here in town. A lot of years of making exhibitions and experiences. And in this new role, I oversee all the U.S. operations for Exhibition Hub.
Now the bodies, I wasn't going to dive into that, but now you mentioned it. Is that the one that's like pitch black when you go in? My son went to one, the bodies.
Oh, well, so there was a show, and probably one of the best shows I worked on, called Dialogue in the Dark.
Okay.
So that was all pitch black. And you actually went in and you experienced these different environments, a natural environment, a commerce environment, a mode of transportation, and then a city, sort of an urban scene, all in complete darkness, led by this guide. So you had a cane to help you find your way, and you were led by this disembodied voice. And at the end of the experience, you found out that your guide was visually impaired.
Oh, I've missed that part.
So it was a really amazing way of reversing the concept of ability, because you all of a sudden, as soon as you get into this dark space, you hear this voice, you follow it. You know, they have the knowledge, and in a normal everyday environment, you would see a person with visual impairment and you would say, that poor person, or I have to help that person. But this whole concept was one that was meant to empower those who were visually impaired, but also to start that conversation of what is ability.
That's great, because I know my son went to that and went to Bodies exhibit. So you say you've been in Atlanta for 20 some years, I believe.
It's about 20 years.
20 years. I've been here 12, so you've got me definitely beat. So what brought you to Atlanta?
Well, I was living in New York, and I was working on a bunch of traveling exhibit concepts. So way back in the day, there were a few groups that created these traveling exhibitions that would primarily go to museums. Mm-hmm. And one of those groups was here in town. And I was working with them, writing exhibits for them, creating exhibits for them. And really, when I created the Bodies exhibit, and it turned out it was going to be this big hit, they said, "Hey, John, we'd really like to keep working with you, but in order to really do that, we need you to be here in Atlanta." So that brought me to Atlanta to really launch this overall brand of Bodies the Exhibition.
Okay. Very cool. Hope you love Atlanta. I know.
I really do like Atlanta. I mean, for the first probably 12 or 14 years, I wasn't here that much.
Yeah.
Because I was all over the world. I mean, there were times when I would open, I opened an exhibit in Lisbon, and then the next week I opened one in Prague, and then in Madrid, and then with some trips to St. Petersburg in between. So there was a lot, and then all over the country and all over the world, there was just a lot of travel. At the time, I was living in Druid Hills, and it was a great neighborhoods, great old neighborhoods, but I've really in the last 5 or 6 years really gotten to know Atlanta a lot better, and I'm really impressed with how Atlanta's grown, mm-hmm. and how the overall demand for arts and entertainment has grown. And that's one of the reasons that we brought Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience, to Atlanta in 2021, was because we saw Atlanta as a place that was underserved culturally. I mean, you got some big exhibits at the High Museum, you have some, exhibits that come through the Fern Bank, but there really wasn't kind of a focus on consistently bringing big blockbuster experiences to Atlanta. For whatever reason, I mean, it got overlooked between New York and Miami is where people were going with their shows. And so, we said, let's really focus on Atlanta. I mean, I lived here a long time. I know the makeup of the town enough that I knew that if we brought the right thing, people would find a way to get there. And it really paid off. I mean, we had a huge success with Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience. And, I'm really glad to be able to do this in Atlanta, which is, an adopted hometown.
Yep.
Because what I'm seeing is the ability to really build community. to drive economic development, but also to bring exciting projects and products and experiences to the over 6 million people that live in the metro area.
So that's the perfect opportunity to talk about Exhibition Hub, and then why are you in Dorville? How did you pick Dorville for your new museum project?
Well, we looked at probably 30 different sites over the course of about a year, and there was levels of development that were required. There were various deals that were in some phase of happening. So a lot of times what happens is we'll work with developers who have a 7-phase project, like we're doing that in Washington, D.C., and we come and slide in between phases when they're not, they're not ready to go from phase 1 to phase 2 or phase 2 to phase 3. So there's available space. We just had a lot of conversations, and what we were looking for was a location that was a standalone building that had a good amount of space. So in Dorville, we've got 50,000 square feet. But that also was easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the great things about where we're located. We're right at 285 and Buford Highway, but essentially at 285 and 85.
Right.
So everybody from the north to the south to the east to the west can get to us and from downtown, and all the neighborhoods can get to us within about 30 minutes. So that was a real determining factor, that ease of access. Plus, we have about 400 free parking spaces, which makes a huge difference in Atlanta. If you go downtown, you're always paying for parking. You're fighting for parking, and in Dorville we don't have that issue. And the neighborhood overall is really stable, which we really liked as well. Another part about Dorville that we've embraced is the incredible multicultural and international aspect of Buford Highway. You have some of the best restaurants and eateries in the Southeast right there outside our front door. So we're working with those restaurants to create a cultural passport program where we redirect our guests, our hundreds of thousands of guests that are coming through the doors, to these eateries and restaurants. And that goes back to what I was saying about helping drive additional economic development and helping build community.
Well, that's very interesting because I've got a meeting on Thursday where we're putting together a passport type program for Buford Highway.
Oh, well, we should compare notes.
We do, because before COVID, we had a BuHi app. The problem was technology about 5 years ago didn't really work as it is today, but we developed a program for BuHi, Buford Highway, in Chamblee and Dorville. So we actually have a new committee that Dorville started back up again, and Chamblee now, and we're talking to Brookhaven about developing a program, app web-based, that would promote the international diversity, international culture, international flavor. So we have definitely got to get together because you're doing this, the cities are doing this, we're looking at this, so we definitely need to talk.
Yeah, I mean, we have, ours is a printed map that we have for our guests, and we also do recommendations on our website at exhibitionhub.com and monetexpo.com. But that would be great. I mean, I'd like to be on there, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're right next door to Buford Farmers Market, which is, one of the best international markets in the Southeast.
Well, the thing with that corridor is you've got H Mart just almost off of it.
Right.
The Buford Highway International Market. You've got a couple other Asian markets right on Buford Highway. The one further down, the Plaza Fiesta Mall. And then there's one in Brookhaven. I can't think of the name of it, but we definitely need to get together. Very excited to continue talking with you about that.
The assembly there too.
Yes.
Is huge. So that was that helped shape our thinking as well in terms of choosing Dorville.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also say that the city itself was incredibly receptive to us coming. So the mayor, the city council, all the city staff, from the time that we started discussions with them about, hey, this is a location of interest, they were really on top of it. They have a vision for that Buford Highway corridor and for Dorville to become more of an arts-driven city. And obviously, we play right into that overall plan that they have.
Well, it's perfect because Chambly really originated the original one several years ago. Now Doraville has kicked it off again and brought Chambly back to the table. So it's very cool now that you've actually further ahead than we are.
So what we've done is we've talked with, we've identified 15 or 20 local eateries of various, from various nationalities. And obviously we had to go try them all,
Yeah.
which is the most fun part of it. But then we basically created this map and said, because we have we have thousands of people that come a week, and they drive from as far as 5 hours away.
Wow.
They really make a day of it. And so we said, let's make a day of it in Doraville. When people come to us, they say, oh, what else is there to do around here? We say, well, here are some great options if you want to do some shopping or if you want to go try a different cuisine. And we just created this map. And then we went and talked we're in the process of talking to the restaurants now and saying, we're going to send people here. If you'd like, would you like to offer them something when they come? So then we could say, like for example, Casa Vieja, which is a great Colombian place, a couple free empanadas when you come. Ten Cha, which is a wonderful bubble tea establishment right across the street from us, they have a 15% discount for anybody who comes in the door. That's come from our exhibits.
Nice.
So, that it just helps to drive revenue. We're not asking for anything back from these places. We're just saying, hey, we want to send more people to you, and then we go check in with them. And they're already busy because they're great places, but we do hear from them. Yeah, we got 15 people in, we got 15 groups in from your from Exhibition Hub last week. So it's nice to see that we're able to redirect people or help people plan more of a day in that part of town.
We definitely need to pick up the conversation about that, and also about packaging with hotels for the ones driving the 5 hours in to stay, get them to do other things while they're in town. So you've basically you're handling the creating and the organization of the museum, but you're taking it out, like to say, on steroids. I mean, you're really packaging, working with restaurants, working with the city, now with us in the Convention Visitor Bureau. And we want to thank you. Our staff came, and I wasn't able to make it, but our staff came and went through Star Wars, had a wonderful time, came back, just excited as can be. That led really to you being our first podcast guest, and we're really excited about that. So you want to talk about now some of your different exhibits coming up? We know Star Wars just ended, but you got great things still going on and a lot of great things being planned.
Sure. So we have a long-term commitment on this building. When we took it over, it was a dilapidated building. So we basically rebuilt it and created a 50,000 square foot exhibition center. It has essentially the ability to offer two 25,000 square foot blockbuster exhibitions or cultural attractions at the same time. And but it also we could do one mega exhibit depending on what it is. So right now we're featuring Claude Monet, the Immersive Experience, which is similar to our blockbuster Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience, in that it's a full immersion into the life and work and times of Claude Monet. You enter into a first gallery that's full of information, so you learn all about the time in which Monet lived. There's a lot of really interesting factors to consider there. One is that right before he was born, photography was invented. And a lot of people said at that time, well, painting is dead. So, that's the kind of a backdrop. Like, what do we need painting for anymore if we have photography? There were also new advances in color theory, so how colors were combined to create different colors, how colors complemented one another. And there was also this wave of influence from Japan and from the Far East that was coming into Europe for the first time. So all of these factors together really set the tone for the kind of work that Monet was going to do. He also had a bit of a typical relationship with his father, where he wanted to be an artist, his father wanted to be a businessman. But it went a little further because there was a war in Algeria that the wealthier families could buy their children out of having to go to war, which is, but his father said, you know what, you go and be a soldier, and then you'll see what life's all about. So he, in a certain way, because at the time, that was a brutal war, one way he was sending his son off to death because he wanted to be an artist. A couple of years later, his aunt actually purchased him out of that to allow him to come back to France and continue pursuing his art. So there was that, family tension and that, what's art good for? But the other thing that was really interesting was that photography had this, again, there was this tension. We don't need painting anymore. But Monet said, a photograph can show you what something looks like, but it can't show you how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really a lot of his style, which we've come to know as Impressionism. He put the feeling into those works that you saw. But at the same time, he stole items from photography, like cropping a photo. Previously, we always had to look at a painting that was a huge pastoral painting. You couldn't leave anything out of it. You had to see the whole landscape. But here, Monet said, well, I want to center my subject, and what's on the right and left of it doesn't really matter as much. So you learn about all of this in this first gallery, as well as along with Monet's troubled eyesight, which he had through his whole life, which a couple of things with that. He was forced to look quite often, more often than a regular painter or a typical painter, at his subject and then back to the canvas to make sure he was getting it right because his eyesight wasn't great. So that's also part of the reason why his brushstrokes are the way they are. And later in his life, he developed really bad cataracts, which then filtered the light he saw through his eyes, so he saw a lot more violets and deeper hues, and he had this whole violet period in his life. He then had one of his cataracts removed, which at the time was the removal of the entire lens of the eye, essentially. So now he doesn't have a lens in one eye, which allows him to see ultraviolet light. So he had this entire struggle with his eyesight that ended up helping him create the works the way he created it. And this is all in your first gallery here. We really, as somebody who's created a lot of experiences for museums, and as somebody who's a writer and spent a lot of time in school, I always want to make sure that there's a lot to learn and take in. But the other thing that we do is we don't just tell you about it. In a museum, you might just hear about this stuff or read about it. We also take you there. So we take you into Monet's atelier in Giverny, where you see a faithful recreation of that room. We take you into his gardens that surrounded Giverny, that were the source of so much of his inspiration and so much of his works. And then, of course, you have our crown jewel, which is our immersive gallery, which is 10,000 square feet, that features a 35-minute loop of sort of the history of Monet's works as seen through the lens of his voyages, because he traveled all over Europe to bring back these amazing vistas and these amazing landscapes that he could share with people. So there's a lot in this Monet, the immersive experience, and that's not even counting the virtual reality component at the end, where you put on a set of VR goggles and you actually see the world through Claude Monet's eyes. You see the different places in the world he traveled, turning into 10 of his most iconic paintings. So it's really a fulfilling, enriching experience it's got something for everybody. It has something for every style of learning. That's one of our experiences. And we're just about to launch. We're just about to open. We've announced, and we're in the process of installing right now. I don't know when this will air, but we'll probably be open by that point. Art of the Brick Immersive Experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so Art of the Brick is a Lego art show by the world's foremost Lego artist, Nathan Sawaya. And he creates the most amazing sculptural masterpieces entirely out of Legos. this show, his original Art of the Brick show has traveled around the country and around the world. I mean, it's been to over 50 cities around the world with huge success. This is the next level. So Nathan Sawaya is a genius when it comes to creating Lego art. I mean, he's a genius and a talented artist in his own right, but the medium of Lego is a wonderful, unique way to express it. But we've taken all of our immersive technologies that we have perfected or really honed over the years and added that layer on to this experience. So that then caused Nathan to say, all right, well, I want to take my work to the next level. So we see these monumental pieces. We see pieces that are, over 10 feet tall, created entirely from Legos, all surrounded by the backdrop of our projection technology and an incredible soaring musical score. So it's going to be something that it will be the hit of the summer in Atlanta. It's really going to be it's going to blow people's minds.
I mean, the thing with Legos that's interesting to me is you think of it as a kid's thing, but it's not. I mean, you have adults, there's adult projects with Lego. If you're interested in Star Wars or Doctor Who or whatever, there are pieces, or if you're into cars or whatever, there's Lego pieces for everything. And to have someone that's a genius in designing and coming up with artwork out of Legos is just very intriguing to me.
I mean, you wouldn't even. It's so inspiring. Like you can't even picture what you could do with Legos until you see what the extent is of what can be done with Legos until you see some of the things that Nathan puts out there. And it really is inspiring. We also have in this experience, we have a wonderful play area at the end for the kids to come and build their own Lego pieces. He also has a video game, an old arcade game. I won't give away too much of it, but that he created entirely from Legos, but the game is also in there. So you're playing this arcade game with the surrounding of the entire thing being built out of Legos.
Wow.
But it's really, the other thing about Nathan's work is he really focuses on what does it mean to be human. And so he has all these different expressions of people, wonderful figures where you really can relate to these figures as these different expressions of emotion. Another part of this experience that is tremendous is he's created all of these sculptures of endangered species.
Wow.
And he really draws attention to the fact that these species are going extinct, not because of natural reasons, but because of our own actions. And it really is a call to action as well. And that's this massive gallery that we have called the Pernicium Extinction. And Pernicium comes from the Latin that means ruin or disaster. So this is an extinction that's a disaster that's caused entirely by us. So as we go away from this, we have this wonderful connection to what it means to be human.
This is probably a good point because you've kind of started into it. What really is the impact you want visitors to take away? What does art do for their lives? I mean, you started talking about that, but what do they get from art that they might not think about?
So I've reflected on this quite a bit over the last few years. And one of the things I've always loved to do this. I mean, I was born to tell stories and create things. And so for me personally, there's a significant amount of joy in just making something. There's a real satisfaction when I'm in the process of making something. One of the things that really got me excited was when we opened Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience in Atlanta, was seeing, which was basically right at the end of, right in the middle of the pandemic. So was looking around Atlanta, and the freeways are empty. Everybody, the stores are closing. Restaurants can't stay open. People are, secluded in their homes. was being able to once again create the sense of community. So that was for me a really big, um, it was like a charge almost I took on, that let's go and rebuild our communities with this experience which people are longing for. So part of it was that we had this, part of it was just the time, right? There wasn't anything else going on,
Right.
but part of it is this tremendous experience that we've created that really drew people out. And as I saw people coming, I worked with local businesses and local establishments in that area around Kirkwood to let them know this was coming, to get ready, that there were going to be a lot of people coming, that their businesses would be able to stay open. So that was really a satisfying part for me, and something I'd never really thought about before because I hadn't been faced with those circumstances.
Right.
None of us had. That this was a great way to drive commerce, to bring people out again, but also to create community. When it comes to art itself, one of the great things about what we offer is we offer an art and entertainment experience.
Mm-hmm.
And entertainment really means between time, which, you've got your daily life, you've got all your regular commitments. You find this piece of time to go and have this different experience. It's a very special experience for people. They plan it weeks in advance, months in advance, or that weekend this is something to do. But what we are able to offer is this ability for people to be refreshed and recharged and have a new perspective. And that's really satisfying for me. And I had incredible conversations with people who come out of the experience. I mean, I've had people coming out with big smiles on their face, and people coming out with tears of joy or tears of satisfaction, and just a general overall sense of calm and well-being. And there's a lot of studies actually that have been done about the health benefits of art and interestingly digital art,
Mm-hmm.
that really can go on to benefit you for a long, can reduce feelings of anxiety, can help you be more centered and more focused in the rest of your day-to-day activities. So while it's an experience and an attraction and entertainment, it fills this bigger role of feeding the soul of the guests who come in.
Well, it definitely sounds like it's a great leisure activity, but it also sounds like you're getting educated. So it's like an edutainment type program where you might not go there to be educated, but you're getting it and you're learning and you're experiencing and you're coming out renewed, as you said, which is the greatest thing about art, one of the greatest things about tourism as it is. You said you like to tell stories. Do you have one major story that you'd like to talk about from creating this or any exhibit or anywhere you've been around the world with your travels and your museums?
Well, let's talking about Van Gogh, the immersive experience. I think that there's so many stories.
Wow.
But I'll focus on we're talking about these health benefits a little bit. When we had Van Gogh at here in Atlanta, I ended up in a conversation with a veteran who had PTSD, and he said that being in that immersive gallery was the first time he had felt peace and calm in a public place since before he went to war.
Wow.
And that was really a powerful. That was really powerful for me. It really stuck with me. Another just small favorite story is we have this coloring area at the end where guests can color in a masterpiece, and we do that with Van Gogh. We also do it with Monet, and you color in, you get an outline of the artist's work. You color it in, and you scan it into our scanner, and it goes up on a big screen in that gallery. You become a part of the show forever. And everybody says, and we give you these big crayons because, especially with Van Gogh's work, that was kind of how he worked. He worked with these big brush strokes. But so people say, oh, it's crayons and it's coloring. This is for kids. but I can't tell you the number of people who, of every age group, octogenarians who are holding hands at the end of the night coloring these works in, and we stay open late in order for them to finish their works. So that's another it's just a fun little story that I like to tell.
So with that, so we always know there's also issues going on. So you got great stories to tell. So what is a major challenge you've had to do and how you've overcome that? That can lead people into how we change the world.
I mean, for us, the major issues have been with Exhibition Hub have really been finding that right venue. We talked about how we looked at 30 some sites in Atlanta before we selected Doraville.
Right.
And it's, every place you walk into is going to have its challenges. And, that's been kind of the biggest issue with being able to operate around the country is working with local municipalities to find the right building that's going to work the right way. And then hopefully being able to stay for a long period of time. But when we go into a new market, we never know how it's going to be received. I mean, we know that people love art, they love immersive art, they love engagement and interactivity. But so we try to balance that with, every place we go with, can we do something that's short term with the goal of it going longer term? So, it's not an issue, but it's a conversation point that we have with each city we go into, where we say, we want to be here for a long period of time, but we have to find a way that it makes sense from the beginning for us, because it's a big financial investment to operate for a shorter period of time until we know for sure that we can stay longer. But in the 15 markets that we're in the United States, we've only closed one of them so far.
Wow. So before we started the show, we were talking about Assembly, the film studios. Do you think is it a plus that this one of the largest film studios in Georgia is what, half a mile or something like that away from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Assembly is a great operation, and they're gonna, as they come online more and more, they're gonna bring greater awareness of arts and culture. They're going to bring all kinds of programming, and it's just going to continue to build that critical mass of arts programming in the Northeast. That I think we'll see a lot more art galleries and artists emerging in that along that Beaufort Highway corridor that are going to be driven by the work we're doing and the work the Assembly's doing.
Have you ever worked with art incubators or creating incubators? I think that's something that could be an interesting piece to DeKalb or Doraville or.
Kind of, but not ever officially. But one of the things that we are focused on doing this year and next year is finding local artists whose work we can present in our common spaces. So we plan to do some just small exhibitions of artworks. We have quite a few walls that are more common, without really, it being a official exhibition, but it being an exhibition that's open to all the public that comes through. We also have a really nice cafe in the Art Center in Doraville, where we can present works as well. So that's something that, in a sense, we would become our own incubator.
Nice.
So that's, we would be interested in doing that with artists who work in any kind of media. But we also are working on developing a program, and it's probably a couple of years out. But I'm happy to start sooner with emerging digital artists whose works we can present on a night or in our immersive gallery for a period of time, where they really get a chance to see their work on this big canvas. I mean, we're talking about a 10,000 square foot room with 30-foot high walls and 24 projectors of 4K projection. So that's something that we're really looking forward to doing more too, because the more digital art centers you have, the more digital artists you need to bring exciting content to them.
You know, as you were talking, I started thinking, I know the exhibits are going on during the day, but do you ever do like private parties at night in the exhibit hall?
We do private events and private parties. It's definitely something that for this year we're focused on in terms of we've got corporate packages that we've developed. We've got outreach that we've started to do. Hopefully we can work with Discover DeKalb to bring over some of those convention groups. I've been to a lot. We were talking about trade shows.
Right.
I've been to a lot of trade shows, and there's always that night when the kickoff or the closing event. So we would love to be part of that overall fabric of those experiences that come to DeKalb, where when a convention comes to town, this is where you start, or this is where the wrap-up party is. So that's something that we're focused on this year in terms of further developing the venue. We're also working on quite a bit of evening entertainment programming. So for Valentine's Day, for example, we had a string quartet, and we had hundreds of people come out to the exhibition center to just drink in the music of Van Gogh, or of Monet, drink in a little champagne as well, and just be immersed in the art. It's a great date night. It was a great way for people to come out. And so we're working on additional programming that has to do with a lot of live music and other types of performances at the Art Center.
Sounds like a great opportunity to have your, like you said, your closing or your opening party, or just a unique way for convention to have an event that they might not have that experience anywhere else. So excited about that. With this, is there anything else you want to discuss, or you want to talk about any other? I know you said Van Gogh, Monet, Star Wars just left. You're bringing in the Lego brick exhibit. Do you have other future plans you want to talk about, or any other stories or wrap up conversation?
Well, so we're developing about 2 new exhibitions and experiences a year. We have a very exciting one that's just coming over from Europe called Bubble World. And it's as fun as it sounds. It's 13 rooms of what life would be like if you were a bubble. So you start in a big bubble dome. You go to the bottom of the ocean. You're an air bubble in this fully immersive LED room, LED floors and walls and panels around you. You dive into a big bubble bath pool. You ride in a hot air balloon. You go into an infinity room. So it's been really well received. We're launching that in the U.S. in L.A., but that will come to Doraville. I've created a lot of dinosaur exhibits over the years.
Oh.
I don't know. It's probably about half of the ones that are out there traveling right now. But we have a dinosaur exhibition called Dinos Alive, and it's my favorite of all the ones that I've done, because it takes again that immersive technology and puts you in the environment of being in that Mesozoic era. So there are several other projects that we're working on. We have this long-term commitment to Doraville, to our location, and so we'll continue to bring programming on a regular basis for the long term in this area. So it's exciting, and it's exciting to be able to offer this center of cultural attraction for the entire Atlanta Metro.
So I'm sure you've got a list of your events with Monet and Van Gogh and the brick exhibit.
Art of the Brick.
Art of the Brick Immersive Experience on your website. So what is your website so our guests can take a look at your place?
Exhibitionhub.com
Okay.
is the best place to go to learn all about Exhibition Hub and our events and our upcoming events.
And I know you can go to discoverdecab.com to get it at exhibitionhub.com, and also to get your calendar events on your site as well as our site. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Any last minute remarks?
I'm really grateful to be here. It's great to be the inaugural guest on your podcast. It's an honor for me, and I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And looking forward to bringing incredible arts and culture to DeKalb for years to come, and definitely looking forward to creating that cultural passport with you.
Oh, I'm very excited about that. In fact, after we get off here, we can talk about that and then get you involved in it more. So, yeah, we'd love to work with you on that. Again, thank you for coming to the very first DeKalb Tourism Talks.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure. Thanks, James. All right, thanks, James.